Welcome to Kanika's Corner. In last week's video, we spoke about comparisons and how to deal with it as adults. But what's the effect on children and how can we as parents, help our children out by not comparing them as much? All of this in today's video. I was constantly compared to my younger brother, mainly for academics, right? He was really good at his studies and I was very, very mediocre. I just about managed to pass in school due to science and maths. But I never felt inferior because this was the rest of society that was doing that, right? My parents and grandparents weren't comparing us. And because of that, I did not have an inferiority complex against him. I felt like he does his thing, I do my thing. We are two completely different individuals. In fact, I had a lot of support to say, you do what you like. You like dance, they put me in for dance classes. I like music, they put me in for that also, right? There was never any comparison at home. There was no sibling rivalry that was caused due to these comparisons, purely for the fact that family was not comparing us. Big difference, right? Society is always there around us to tell us this, to tell us that. Of course, everyone has an opinion. But if our family doesn't do it, and this is where we can make a difference for our children, if we cannot make the comparisons, then they are not as affected. It does not matter what the rest of society says. Every child is unique. The more we compare them, actually each of us are unique, right? But the more we compare our child to others, the sooner they lose the innate strengths that they have, and they become this idea of what a common, what a child should be. Elections here in India recently got over. There's a lot of mudslinging, parties calling each other names, candidates, pulling each other down. And it reminded me of this story of Japanese and Indian crabs. Japanese and Indian fishermen had gone fishing together and they were putting crabs into their pots. Now, as soon as the Japanese fishermen caught crabs, they would immediately put a lid on the barrel with them. The Indian pot, however, did not have a lid on it, and the Japanese were really curious, wanted to know why not. Turns out that the Indian crabs pull each other down, right? And don't let anyone escape. So our mode of comparison is usually in that negative form. We are pulling each other down rather than saying that, hey, look at what that person has done in a positive way, in a happy way, while talking about our strengths. And sometimes that's what we end up doing with our children, right? We tell them, you did not do this well. Let's instead start our sentences with, this is what you did well, and this is what we can do better for next time, right? There's never anything wrong that has happened. We can always push our potential and become better. Comparison most of the time doesn't make us feel good about ourselves. It actually demotivates us. Our interactions with our children become a lot nicer when we sort of talk about their strengths and what they did well, as compared to talking about what they didn't do and whatever weaknesses they do have, right? Let's start working on it without actively saying you can't do it. We are instead saying, wow, you did this, and then we focus on the weaknesses that they have. An important part in comparisons is to make sure that we're not so focused on the weakness that we forget to mention what the child did do, what they succeeded in doing. So it's very natural as parents for us to have expectations of our children, right? Some of them are what we could not do of ourselves and we want our children to do it. But let's set realistic expectations depending on what our child likes to do, what the child is good at, and what the child cannot do. It's important for us to respect, our child and their wishes. But equally, we are our baby's parents, and as adults, there are some things that we know. So we will guide them also. Even if we do not voice a comparison, it is seen in our actions, right? Children pick up on our cues really quickly. So much better to have it all out in the open and talk about it. And then there is absolutely no confusion, no disappointment, no, extraordinary happiness. It's all balanced emotions. It's perfectly okay for our child to know that, we are angry or disappointed with them about something, but it shouldn't become the basis of our relationship with them, right? We want to foster, unconditional love. Basically, this feeling that, they know we are there with them regardless of what their actions are, right? We are also human, we also show our emotions, but it's critical that we give our child a sense of security, that they can know that they have done something not right, but we are still there with them. We are not going to alienate them. We are not going to send them off somewhere just because they did not do something right. And that is where comparisons and how we deal with it plays a really huge role, because we are telling the child that, okay, you may not have lived up to what our idea was, but we're still here for you, right? We're still your parents, we still love you, and this is the whole basis of unconditional love. Don't beat yourself up if you have compared your child. Relax. The important thing is not to make a habit out of it. It happens to the best of us. In that moment we are annoyed about something and we will say it to our child. Perfectly okay, as long as we understand what we are saying and what we should say differently the next time. As a child, I was constantly compared to my mother, and that my self-esteem actually took quite a big beating because of that. I looked like her, I spoke like her, and everyone had these expectations that I would also be like her. You should do things like she has done. She's a doctor, you need to go into medicine. And to me, that was not an option because I don't like science. I did hopelessly at maths, and I didn't want to, be miserable all my life. I wanted to follow my passions. Amma was not asking me to do science, right? But everyone around was saying, you've got to do that. Really badly affected me and my self-esteem, and just at this point when I was creating my identity in my teenage years, and a long struggle of, negative emotions towards Amma. I didn't want to be her, in fact, because I was compared to her so often. So I reached the stage where I wanted to do everything anti-Amma, right? Everything against who Amma was. That is what I wanted to be. I wanted to make sure I was nothing like her. The fun part of it now is that there are a lot of qualities that I have which are like hers, and I don't mind. I enjoy being like her now because there are no comparisons. I have my identity. I know who I am. But we've reached this stage, where we've become very good friends because as adults, we took the time to sit down with each other, understand, have these really honest conversations which were very painful. The result of all of this is that we have a really nice relationship at this point, right? Very supportive towards each other. We understand each other better. And I think it makes a lot of difference if as adults we can go back and repair these bridges that troubled us when we were children. But those 10 years, absolute hell, because that the comparison can suck you down into this well of despair, and there's nothing much you can do about it. Very odd, right? How comparisons can work, and when you want it to go one way, it can go completely the opposite way. I've counseled a lot of families with teenagers where, the parents will say, he or she doesn't like to go out anymore, doesn't go out with them specifically, happy to go out with friends but not with the parents, with other family members, for one very simple reason. If they are being ridiculed or compared in front of others, and this is happening all the time in social settings, it is no wonder that the teenager doesn't want to go out with the family, right? So let's try and change that situation. It didn't happen with me. I'm really lucky about that. My parents never compared me to anyone. There was, of course, the rest of society that would compare me, but my parents did not. And therefore, I was always happy to go out with them wherever they went. Our parents did the best for us while they brought us up, right? And in hindsight, either we feel it or they feel that there could have been things done differently, especially in the way they spoke to us, the way they compared us. But that's the way we feel now. And if we feel differently about it, right? so much that we can do to change the way we are dealing with our children. But I can tell you, some are just habits, and there are many times when we may say exactly the same thing to our children and then feel like, oh no, we shouldn't have said it. But you know what? That oh no is what is important, because as soon as we say oh no, we want to make a change, and we can. This is my sister-in-law Janani, and we both have girls who are only 5 weeks apart. So you can imagine lots of comparisons for us with these two girls. It started with us with the pregnancy itself, right?
Yeah. We had the joy of being pregnant together. That was fun. And also I was pregnant with my second child.
Yeah, my first.
And we had a different belly size. It was fun to see that comparison started from then on.
Yeah. And especially at our bangle ceremony where we had it together, and so everyone was like, oh, this is like this, that is like that.
Was that a difficult time for you? For me, it didn't matter. I mean, I was obviously pregnant. People kept looking at you and saying you were not looking pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think you had taken so much trouble to get pregnant with Gauri. That was so important to you.
I think what I realized was I would have loved to have looked more pregnant. But, considering that we went through so much of treatment to get pregnant, having a healthy baby inside became more important. And it wasn't about how I looked.
And actually that thing of is it medically important or not has continued beyond that, right?
Correct, yeah.
So Laya is on the 5th percentile for her age. 5th to 10th, she varies on any given day.
And Gauri is between the 80th and 90th percentile.
So, it's very obvious when you see them that they are two different sizes. And it's been something that has been a concern, that has been commented on, that's been compared from the beginning. So there were so many comments on that.
So many asking us, are they the same age? Is she okay? Is that one okay? Yeah, we had a lot of comments at that point.
What did you feel as a mother about yourself because your child was getting comments or comparisons?
I think my self-esteem was balanced enough at that point that I did not feel deflated when others compared Gauri to Laya, to Achintya, to any other child. And we had a lot of children in that age group, right? Between friends and family, we suddenly had a little boom at that point.
Post-pandemic boom.
Post-pandemic, yeah. So, I think that was important that, I felt confident enough in myself that it did not affect me at that point.
Okay.
What happened to you?
I think it was a bit of a journey for me. Not that I felt like my child was unwell, because I knew I had the confidence that I have done everything necessary.
Right.
I finished checking it up.
Right. Yeah.
I found it frustrating when some, relatives would hear that I finished checking everything up and still worry. And bring that worry to me and sort of, when I didn't share their worry, make it feel like I wasn't concerned about my child. That I found frustrating.
Okay.
That I've had to work on. And that led me to do two things. One is be aware that they are just sharing their emotion. I need to leave space for that. Right. And listen to it if I can, and if I can't, find someone else who will listen to them. So in that front, Siddharth is very comfortable doing that. So I let him be the person if needed. But apart from that, I think the other thing I did was I paid attention to how much I felt the need to share. I think motherhood is even if you've done it many times, every child is new and it feels surprising. There's so many hundreds of things you want to talk to others about. You want to share, various things. Also the level of attention you are paying to a child, no? What did they eat? How much did they poop? What was the consistency of said poop? There's so many details you're paying attention to that are important to you. Others don't need to know that.
Others agree. But then when you have two of them of a similar age, no, you start looking, oh, did this one finish its plate? Did that one not?
Yeah.
You know, what was served, how much was completed, and therefore how many times did they poop, how many times did they pee, how many times did they go out, how many times did they come back in?
Yeah.
That also happens, right?
Yeah.
But then like you were saying, it's about understanding what you need to share with others.
Yes. Yeah. Not so much about hiding, but about just the mental load of it.
Yeah.
You as a parent have spent the last how many months or years paying attention to your child's eating habits.
Yeah.
You know the pattern.
Right.
You know some frequencies of various different things. But when you give a glimpse of that to somebody else, and that glimpse might have been concerning,
Correct.
you then have to explain that entire pattern. Today, Leia may not have eaten anything.
Yeah.
If I tell someone that, they're going to be very worried.
Yeah, very worried.
They don't know that she, wasn't having a well stomach yesterday.
Correct.
Or maybe once a week she doesn't eat, the next day she gorges.
Yeah.
I have to sit and explain that to them,
Correct.
and then it makes it feel like I'm invalidating their worry.
Exactly. So it's a very, very fine line to balance between listening to others and sort of truly listening to them, but not necessarily taking everything in and trying to accomplish that.
Yes. I actually found also, I'm sure you have this with some people, right? Some people you don't necessarily share every detail of the child's life with for similar reasons. They get worried.
Yeah.
But it's also important to include them in their lives, right?
Correct.
I think you do that beautifully with everybody.
Thank you. It's an internal struggle of should I say this now? Should I say it then? Should I say it at all?
Yeah.
It's a constant thought process that's going on inside. Yeah. Coming up next week, I've got my friend Namrata talking about the long-lasting consequences of being compared to in childhood with a real-life example. So excited to share this journey with all of you.